Masechet Sanhedrin, Daf Pe Dalet, in which we hope to complete the 9th perek and begin the 10th perek of the Masechet. We are working through a baraita that lists those who are liable to mita bideh shamayim versus others who only get a lav. And now we're going to see cases that there's a machloket about them. So this one is ba'al mum. If a kohen has a blemish and he comes and serves, he's not allowed to serve in the Bet HaMikdash with a blemish. What if he does? What's his punishment? Rabbi Omer b'mita, Chachamim omrim be'azhara. And the Braita records that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says he's liable to mita bideh shamayim. Hachamim say no, it's only a prohibition, but not mita bideh shamayim. My tamad Rabbi, what's Rabbi's source? Dichtiv ach el haparochet lo yavo. The full pasuk is that he should not come to the area of the parochet. Ve'el mizbeach lo yigash. He shouldn't come near where the mizbeach is. Ki mumbo. So it says he has a blemish. And if he does, velo yechalel et mikdashi. If he does, he would cause a chilul. So we have the word yechalel here, and we can use a gezerah shava. Ve'alef chilul miteruma. Ma'lehalan b'mita, afkan b'mita. Regarding a kohen who's tameh, who eats teruma, that's tahor, we already established that he gets mita bideh shamayim, and so it says chilul there. So from a gezerah shava, we will learn that this chilul also is mita bideh shamayim. That's the source of Rabbi for a Ba'al Mum. But we ask, V'nelef chilul min notar. It says chilul in lots of places, including regarding notar. If you leave a sacrifice over its time and eat it after the deadline, ma'lehalan becharet afkan becharet. And the punishment for that is more severe. Karet is more severe than mita bideh shamayim. And it says chilul, so make a gezerah shava and say that a Ba'al Mum, like chilul, like nevela, gets karet. So we answer, mistabera mitiruma havale lemelav sheken pesul haguf bepesul haguf. Well, it makes more sense to compare Ba'al Mum to a kohen who's tameh, who eats tiruma tehora, because in both of those cases there's something wrong with their body. They are disqualified either because the kohen is tameh and he's eating tiruma tehora, or because he has a blemish and he's serving in the Bet HaMikdash. That's different from nevela, where the problem is with the animal itself, not with the person. So that makes sense to say it's like teruma, and therefore mita bideh shamayim. But we challenge that. Adraba min notara v'alemelaf sheken kodesh penim pigul v'notar. Actually, a Ba'al Mum, a kohen, serving in the Bet HaMikdash is more similar to notar because both of them have to do with kodesh, have to do with sacrificial matters. They're both problems that happen within the sanctuary precincts, and both will involve korbanot, for which there's a problem of pigul and notar. If one prepares korban thinking that he's going to eat it or do something outside of the time, or actually leaves it afterwards. So these are things that apply to sacrifices, and that would make more sense, therefore, to compare notar to a Ba'al Mum who is coming and offering sacrifices, and not the same as a kohen who's tameh, who's eating teruma. Teruma is not a sacrifice, so it makes more sense to say notar, and therefore gezerah shava would teach that it's karet. Ela mitameh sheshimesh gamar pesul haguf and pesul haguf. Rather, we say, you know what? We're going to compare Ba'al Mum not to notar and not to a kohen who's tameh who eats teruma, because over there you made a good case that it is in many ways more similar to notar, but it's hard to tell. So you know what? Let's find something that's even more similar to Ba'al Mum, and that is a kohen who's tameh who serves in the Bet HaMikdash. That's very similar to a kohen who is a Ba'al Mum who serves in the Bet HaMikdash. Now it happens to be that a kohen who's tameh who serves in the Bet HaMikdash, what's his punishment? Mita bideh shamayim. That itself we learned from a gezerah shava, chilul, with a kohen who's tameh who eats teruma. That's true. So we learned that from a gezerah shava, but now we'll make another link in the chain and say that Ba'al Mum is the most similar to a tameh kohen who serves in the Bet HaMikdash. What do they have in common? Well, number one, they're both Pesul Haguf. They're both a problem in their body. They're either that their body has a blemish or that their body is tameh. That's one similarity. And there's more similarities. Kodesh, Pinim, Pigul, Venotar. Mikodesh, Pinim, Pigul, Venotar. We'll learn something that's Kodesh, that has to do with sacrifices and activities that they're doing in the Bet HaMikdash is Kodesh. So that's true for Baal Mum and Tameh who are serving in the Bet HaMikdash. And Pinim, they both are talking about things that are within the sanctuary precincts, and both are dealing with sacrifices for which the laws of Pigul and Notar apply. So we'll learn the law of a Baal Mum who's involved in Kodesh, Pinim, Pigul, and Notar from Tameh Kohen, who also is involved in Kodesh, Pinim, Pigul, and Notar. So all that is the proof for the Yehuda Nasi, who says Mitabi de Shamayim for Baal Mum. But Rabbanan say, no, it's only Elav and no Mitabi de Shamayim. What's his derivation? Amar Kira bo velo be Baal Mum. In the pasuk from which we learned that a Kohen who's Tameh and eats Terumah, that's tahor, gets the death penalty. That pasuk says, "V'shamarut mishmarti velo yis'u alav chet umetu bo." So we have the word metu over here. Remember the word chet. That's going to come up in a minute. And it says, bo, he will die. So that's a limiting word, meaning only a kohen who's tameh, who eats terumah, will die, but that excludes someone. Who does it exclude? It excludes a Baal Mum who comes and serves in the Bet HaMikdash, does not get the death penalty. Okay, that's the end of that discussion. The next item on the list in the Baraita was hezid b'me'ilah. If someone intentionally misuses consecrated property and gets benefit from it, so what is the punishment for that person? If he does it by mistake, that's korban. But what if he does it on purpose? Rabbi Omer b'mita, Chachamim omrim be'azhara. And again, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says mita b'dei shamayim. Chachamim says no mita b'dei shamayim. It's only prohibited. Mai ta'ama de Rabbi. Amar Rabbi Abu Gamar chet miteruma. Malalan b'mita afkan b'mita. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says we're learning Gezer HaShava chet. It says regarding the pasuk of Me'ilah, says nefesh ki tim'ol ma'al v'chate'a bishkaga mikodshei Adonai ve'vi et ashamo l'Adonai ayatmi min nason berkecha kesef shekalim b'shekel hakodesh le'asham. So it says right there in the beginning, if someone commits me'ilah v'chate'a, so has the word chet there. Now the rest of the pasuk is if someone does it by mistake, then they bring a korban. But now we want to know what it is on purpose. Well, it does say the word chet here, and it also says the word chet regarding a kohen who's tameh, who eats terumah, that's tahor, says chet there, and since that's mita b'dei shamayim, so too here mita b'dei shamayim, that's the proof of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. V'Rabbanan amri amar kera bo velo b'me'ilah. And what will the Rabbanan say? Oh, they will point again to the pasuk before regarding terumah that says bo, only he will get death, meaning that excludes someone else. Who does it exclude? It excludes someone who commits me'ilah on purpose, does not get the death penalty. Okay, back to the Mishnah now. We finished this Baraita. The Mishnah was a while ago, so let's remind ourselves. All the way at the end of the Mishnah, it says, Zar sheshimesh b'mikdash. If a non-Kohen serves in the Bet HaMikdash, what is his punishment? Rabbi Akiva omer, b'chenek chachamim omrim b'idei shamayim. So stakes are higher here. Rabbi Akiva says, chenek, strangulation, that's in a court, an earthly court. Chachamim say no, mita b'idei shamayim. So let's see what their sources are, and actually we're going to see yet another opinion regarding this. Tanya, Rabbi Ishmael omer ne'emar kan v'hazar hakarev yumat, v'ne'emar lehalan kol hakarev el mishkan Hashem yamut, ma lehalan bidei shamayim af kan bidei shamayim. So in this baraita, Rabbi Ishmael is the one who says that's mita bidei shamayim. That would be equivalent with Rabbanan in the Mishnah. And what's their proof? Well, it says in one pasuk in Bemidbar, a foreigner, meaning a non-Kohen who comes to serve in the Bet HaMikdash, says yumat. Now, what kind of punishment is that? Mita b'dei shamayim, in the hands of an earthly court. Well, it says right before that, in the chapter right before, that anyone who comes close to Mishkan Hashem yamut. And over there, that second pasuk quoted is b'dei shamayim, so too is b'dei shamayim. The context here is important. These pasukim come right after the contest between Aharon and the 250 people that were part of Adat Korach, who brought incense in their fire pans, and that was the contest, and they lost, and fire came out from heaven and consumed them. So that's clearly midah bidei shamayim. Literally, fire came down from heaven and destroyed them. And after that, the people, Bnei Israel, who witnessed it, came to Moshe, and they said, oh no, we're all going to die. They're all afraid. And they said, Kol hakareh bakareh el Mishkan Hashem, anyone who comes near the Mishkan, yamut. Shall we totally perish? So they were very afraid. So here, and then the follow-up in the next perek is talking about the same event and says, it's the law following up on it, Hazar hakareh yumat. And so, in fact, it must be talking about the way that they died in the previous perek. So here, we also make a gezer hashava, yumat and yamut. It's slightly different forms, which will come up in a second, but it's basically the same verb, and therefore, just like in chapter 17, when the people are talking, they're referring to midah bidei shamayim of the 250 chieftains, so too, in the law that is about the same thing and has the same verb, must be midah bidei shamayim. That's the proof for Rabbi Ishmael, and that would be the Rabbanan in our Mishnah. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Neman kan, v'hazar hakareh yumat, v'nemar lehalan, v'hanabi hahu, o cholem hachalom hahu yumat, ma'alanim b'skila, afkan b'skila. Now Rabbi Akiva is quoted in the Mishnah as saying chenek, but this is going to be a different view within Rabbi Akiva. It says here that a non-Kohen who comes and serves, he will die. And it says regarding a false prophet or a dreamer, also yumat. And the false prophet gets sikila, and that says yumat, and so too here, yumat makes sense, that should be sikila. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri omer, malalan bechenek, afkan bechenek. Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says, no, the false prophet gets chenek, so too here chenek. He agrees on the gezer hashava, but he disagrees on what the punishment is for the false prophet himself. Now, Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Ishmael, they both make a gezer hashava, and half of it is, they both agree, is from Hazar hakareh yumat. But then each one brings a different pasuk to connect it to. So what's that essence of their machloket? Rabbi Akiva savra danin yumat mi yumat, ven danin yumat mi yamut. Rabbi Akiva says, I want the exact same form of the verb, and here yumat is said in zar, and it says yumat also regarding the prophet. So that's a better gezer hashava. Rabbi Ishmael sabah danin hejot mehejot, ven danin hejot mi navi. Rabbi Ishmael says we're going to judge a regular person to another regular person, meaning that a zar, that's a non-Kohen, a non-special person, comes and serves, he's going to get this punishment. And the people were also talking about, all of us, we're all going to die. They were talking about not someone who has a special rank, and therefore those are more similar conceptually, even if not verbally, and we should not learn from a Navi, who's a different category. A Navi is its own separate category, maybe because a Navi who does such a thing, that should get a worse punishment, sikila. And so we're not going to learn from that special category. But Rabbi Akiva, how would he respond to that? Maybe how could we learn a regular person from a Navi? And he'll say, if he's a false prophet that's convincing people to do idolatry, well then he's obviously a hejot, even in the derogatory sense, like in English, an idiot. He's not just a common person, he's even worse than a common person. So there's no more common of a person than that. So even though he's called a Navi, and maybe once upon a time he was a Navi, but at this point, if he's convincing someone to do idolatry, then he doesn't deserve any special treatment, and therefore that's a good gezer hashava. Now what's the machloket between Rabbi Akiva ben Nuri? One says sikila, and Rabbi Yochanan says chenek. Rabbi Shimon v'Rabbanan detanya Navi she'ediach b'skila. Rabbi Shimon omer bechenek. So they're arguing along the same lines as Rabbi Shimon and Rabbanan. As we see in the Braita, a Navi who leads someone to idolatry gets sikila. That would be the same as what Rabbi Akiva says. And Rabbi Shimon says chenek, so that would be the same as what Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri says. Now we ask, Hanan Tanan Rabbi Akiva omer bechenek. In our Mishnah, Rabbi Akiva is quoted as saying chenek, but in this Braita is quoted as saying sikila. So which one is it? In fact, there's two traditions in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva said something, it was memorized, but then over time, the memorizers had had got two different versions of it somehow. Matitin Rabbi Shimon v'aliba de Rabbi Akiva. Baraita Rabbanan v'aliba de Rabbi Akiva. Our Mishnah is the opinion of Rabbi Shimon within, according to Rabbi Akiva, and Rabbi Shimon said chenek. So our Mishnah also said Rabbi Shimon, that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the student of Rabbi Akiva. So that's Rabbi Shimon's version of what he understood from Rabbi Akiva. Whereas the Baraita is the opinion of Rabbanan. It's also, they're saying their opinion also within Rabbi Akiva. They're also quoting Rabbi Akiva. But somehow they heard that Rabbi Akiva said chenek, and so that's what's reported in the Baraita. Hadran alach Elohen hanisrafin. We now begin the 10th perek, Elohen hanechenakin. The following deserve chenek, strangulation. Hamakeh aviv imo, someone who strikes his father or his mother, hits them. Goneb nefesh misrael, someone who kidnaps a Jew. Zaken mamre alpi betin, a rebellious elder. The Sanhedrin says a law, and an elder who's a learned person, respected person, goes back to his town and rules against the law that the Sanhedrin said. Unevi hasheker ve'mitnabe b'shem avodah zarah. Navi sheker is someone who says something in the name of Hashem, but Hashem never said it. He tells people, you can go and violate Shabbat. So that's a Navi sheker. Whereas this is different, someone who says a prophecy in the name of an idol. He says, Baal came to me and told me that you should keep Shabbat. Even if he says to do a mitzvah, but he's quoting a foreign god. So both of these are prohibited, either quoting God when God didn't speak to him, or quoting an idol, even if he says something that's a mitzvah. Both of these get chenek. V'abal eshet ish, regular adultery is chenek. V'zomeme bat kohen u'bo'alaha. Now, a bat kohen who commits adultery, she herself gets serefa. But bo'ala, the adulterer, the man who was with the bat kohen, for him, that's regular adultery, so he gets chenek. And also the witnesses that testify about a bat kohen, they come and say, we saw this bat kohen who was with this guy adulterer. If they turn out to be edim zomamin, they were never there to begin with, so could not have witnessed it, they get the punishment that they would have given. Well, the punishment that they would have given the girl, if she's a bat kohen, that would be serefa. Or the man who gets chenek. So the law is that the edim zomamin there, they get chenek, his punishment, and not serefa, her punishment. That's the Mishnah. Now let's analyze. What's the source that if someone hits their father or mother, they deserve chenek? Dichtiv u'makeh aviv imo mot yumat v'chol mitamura b'torah setam ena ela chenek. The pasuk says anyone who hits his father or mother will get death, mot yumat. And if it says anytime in the Torah death penalty, but it doesn't specify which one it is, the standard one, the default is chenek. Hold on. When it says makeh, the word makeh, to strike, can have two meanings. Sometimes it can mean just to hit someone, just to punch them or slap them, but they're, otherwise they're fine, they live. And sometimes makeh means to kill. So maybe makeh here means to kill, and one is only liable to chenek if he kills his father or mother. Salkadatech katal chad besaif vavi bechenek. Wait a second, that wouldn't make any sense. If you kill someone not related to you, you get saif, which is the second to worst punishment. Sikila serefa, hereg and chenek. So saif is hereg. So if you kill a stranger, you get the third worst punishment. But if you kill your father, then chenek, you get the least stringent punishment. That wouldn't make any sense, that the punishment should be lighter for killing a father than for killing someone else. So that doesn't make any sense. And therefore it's impossible to say that the word makeh in makeh aviv imo means to kill, because that would mean that if you kill a stranger, you get a worse punishment than if you kill a father. Then you are upgraded to or downgraded to a lesser form of capital punishment, which is only chenek. So that wouldn't make any sense, and therefore the word makeh has to mean to hit. Just even hitting a father or mother, that's it, is already liable to chenek. If one would kill a father or mother, then it would be saif, like a murder, like any murderer. Okay, that reasoning makes sense according to the majority opinion that says chenek is the least form of capital punishment. It's the most lenient. But there's a minority opinion of Rabbi Shimon who says that chenek is actually the third punishment and saif is the fourth type of capital punishment. According to that, well, then we could say that makeh means to kill, because that would mean if you kill anybody else, that's saif. That's the most lenient form of capital punishment. If one kills a father or mother, then you get a worse form of capital punishment, which is chenek. And so it's perfectly reasonable to interpret makeh as kill according to that opinion. So we need a different derivation. Ela medichtiv makeh ish vamet mot yumat uchtiv o be'eba hikahu beyado vayamot shema'mina kol echad hika haka'asetam lav mitahu. Rather, we can figure out what the word makeh means when it doesn't say, when it's ambiguous. From the following two pisukim, both of these pisukim are talking about murderers, regular murderers, not parents. It says makeh ish vamet mot yumat. If someone hits a person and they die. So you see, why does it have to say they hit the person and they die? And it also says, if he comes and hits him, biyado, and he dies. So you see that in both of these pisukim, it has to say hit and die. If hit, the word makeh, meant killed, right? Hit and killed. If that verb itself means to kill, then you wouldn't have to say vamet, and you wouldn't have to say vayamot. It would be clear that makeh, he killed him. So therefore we learned, we learned that if you just have the word to hit without vayamot afterwards, it just means to hit someone. So in fact, the word to hit, otherwise, like in this pasuk, makeh abivimo, since it's by itself, it means just slapping someone, just causing an injury, but not killing. If you want to say hit to kill, then you have to add a modifier, makeh, and also vamet, or be'ado vayamot. The Gemara next goes back to these two pisukim that both talk about murder, and wonders, why do we need both of them? Both of them say that if someone strikes a man, so that's murder, death penalty, and then the other one says anyone who strikes a soul, so that's also a murderer. So why do we need both of these pisukim? Because if I only had the first pasuk that says someone who kills an ish, I might have thought that ish refers to an adult. If you kill an adult who is chayav mitzvot and is doing mitzvot, then you're liable to murder. But maybe if you kill a child, maybe that's not liable to the death penalty. It's a crazy thought that killing a child would be not as liable as killing an adult. But anyway, maybe you would have thought that. That's why the other pasuk comes and says, anyone who kills a soul, that includes adults and children. And if it just had the pasuk that says, someone who kills a soul, I would have thought that's talking about any soul, anyone, even a non-viable infant, or an infant that's born after 8 months of pregnancy, which they believed would not be viable. And so in this case, obviously one's not allowed to go and actively kill these infants, but since they are not viable, will not live anyway, therefore someone who does kill them does not get the death penalty. So if I only had the word nefesh, I would think that one does get the death penalty for killing such an infant, and therefore the word ish comes to say an adult to exclude these infants. It does not so children are included because of nefesh, but infants are not included because of ish. Now back to parents. I might have thought that one is liable to the death penalty even if, let's say, one slaps a parent without causing a wound. No blood comes out. It's just, it hurts, but it's just a slap. Or a punch in the stomach or something that doesn't leave a mark and it doesn't cause blood. So maybe one should be liable to the death penalty also for that, because once you say that makeh does not mean murder, killing them, maybe it just means even a slap. But the Mishnah that we're going to see later on says that one is only liable for hitting father and mother if it causes a wound. It has to extract blood. So how would you know that? So we will learn that one gets a death penalty for hitting a parent only if there's a wound that draws blood from a pasuk that this pasuk has nothing to do with a parent, but it's comparing someone who strikes a person to someone who strikes an animal. And it says, well, they're both liable, although they are different. While someone who strikes an animal only pays, someone who, even if he kills the animal, someone who strikes a person will be put to death. But still it's comparing them. Now, when one strikes an animal, one is only liable if he causes the animal to bleed, causes a wound, an injury. Because there's another pasuk, here it is, that says, Makeh nefesh behema yishalemena, nefesh tachat nefesh. Someone, it's the soul. What does it mean, soul? Well, we know that blood is associated with the soul, because the blood, that's the life force. So when it says, Makeh nefesh behema, it means one hits someone else's animal and causes it to bleed, that causes a wound, then one is liable. So since we know that for an animal, one is only liable to pay for an animal injury if you cause a wound, so too, we compare that to a person. And a person, you're only liable if you cause a wound. Well, that would apply to a father and mother as well. One is only liable to the death penalty if one causes a wound. So for an animal, you only have to pay if there's a wound, and for a parent, one gets the death penalty only if there is a wound. Matkif la Rav Yirmiyah. Rav Yirmiyah asks about that. Hold on, is that even true for an animal? Let's say I injure someone's animal without causing a wound. Let's say I overburden, so I borrow your animal, I overburden it, I make it carry heavy stones, and now it's permanently injured. But you can't tell, there's no blood that comes out, there's no black and blue or anything, but it's a bone injury or a different kind of injury. So would I not be liable? I would be liable. So it doesn't make any sense, the law that you said regarding animals. So rather, we'll still use that pasuk, but we'll use im eno inyan. If this word nefesh regarding striking an animal does not apply to an animal, because in fact I have to pay for damages to an animal even if it doesn't bleed. So I'm not going to use it for that. So if it doesn't teach anything about the local context, so we'll use it for a different context. We'll use it for the context of hitting a person. And so now we will learn that a person, one is only liable if he strikes a person, meaning a father or mother. Only if he strikes a father and mother and causes blood. That's what the word nefesh regarding animals is actually referring to. A human and specifically a parent, and that's how we know only if one strikes a parent and causes blood, then he will be liable to the death penalty. Okay, if I learn it from im eno inyan, then why do I need the hekesh in this pasuk that says makeh adam umakeh behema? It's comparing striking a person to striking an animal. What do I learn from that? Now we need it for the baraita of Bechizkiah. That's not quoted here, but Bechizkiah says that just like when one injures an animal, there's no difference between shogeg and mezid. Even if you injure someone else's animal by mistake, you still have to pay. So we're going to compare that law regarding injuring an animal to injuring a human being. The law is that, let's say someone kills a human being and at the same time also causes injury or something, or a monetary fine. Then the person, since they're liable to capital punishment, we say kim lebed rabamineh, and therefore they only get capital punishment and they don't have to pay for damages that the person incurred at the same time. Now, for sure that's true if they kill someone b'mezid. What about if they kill someone b'shogeg? So they kill someone accidentally, they're negligent, so they're not going to get capital punishment. But since it is something that if one did it b'mezid, one would get capital punishment, it is still killing a person. So according to Bechizkiah, if someone does causes damages that one has to pay for at the same time in the same act as killing a person b'shogeg, one does not have to pay. So just like there's no different distinction between shogeg and mezid in the liability that one does have to pay when one injures an animal, there is also no difference between shogeg and mezid when one kills someone b'shogeg or b'mezid. There is no difference, and even if he only killed someone b'shogeg and caused damage in the meantime, one is not liable. So that's the similarity. There's no difference in shogeg and mezid. Regarding an animal, one has to pay in both cases. Regarding a human, one does not have to pay in both cases, but that's what he learns from the juxtaposition. Good. So that's one answer. Now, that works according to the opinion that accepts the baraita of the Bechizkiah. There's a machloket about this in Masechet Ketubot. Ela leman delet le'tana de Bechizkiah hekesha lamali. But according to the opinion that does not accept the baraita Bechizkiah, why does the pasuk compare hitting an animal to hitting a person? Ma makeh behema l'rifua patur, af makeh adam l'rifua patur. And the answer is, just as if someone causes an injury to an animal for medical purposes, let's say I'm a veterinarian, or I'm helping out to do a medical procedure on an animal, and in the end, something goes wrong and it causes the animal an injury. So the veterinarian or the person helping out is not liable. That's also true for a person. If it's very important, if a doctor, in the course of performing some medical procedure, it happens, these are risky things. Of course, not if he does it on purpose, but if he's doing the best job he can, and in the end, it causes a death or injury of that person, the doctor is not liable. And we know that, this is what we learn from the Hekesh. Just like for an animal, one is not liable because one did not injure the animal on purpose. In fact, the opposite. One was trying to heal the animal, so there's no liability. So too for a person. Ben mahu sheyakiz dam le'aviv. And we know that this is subject to a question because it was asked, can a son do bloodletting to his own father? We just said this is very serious. You cannot hit your father and you can't cause him to bleed. But what if the son is a doctor and the father is not feeling well and he wants to do some bloodletting? Can the son do it? He's going to have to pierce the father's vein and take blood out. Is that permitted? Ramatana says yes, it's permitted. And he knows from love your neighbor as yourself. If you were sick, you would want others to do whatever they had to do surgery, cut you open, whatever procedure was necessary. It's a kindness. A person doing you a favor, right? A doctor comes and he does something and cuts you open and does open heart surgery, and then you wake up, hopefully, and you say, thank you, doctor, for cutting me open. So just like you would want that for yourself, a father wants his son to do that. And let's assume that the son is the best doctor around. So then this is a good thing. So if something goes wrong, well, in this case, even if you do it right, the blood is coming out. And so this is permitted because the father wants it, just as anyone would want it. That's one derivation. Another, Rav Dimi bar Chinena amar, makeh adam makeh behema, ma makeh behema l'rifua patur, af makeh adam l'rifua patur. So Rav Dimi learns it from this very hekesh and this pasuk, where it compares striking a person to striking an animal. So just like if one strikes an animal for medical purposes, one is not liable for injury. So too, if someone strikes a person for medical purposes, one is not liable. And that would include a parent, and all the more so, anybody else. And that's what we do. That's why we need the Hekesh to teach this very law. Now that we brought this up, we have a little discussion about this. Rav lashavik libre mishkal le silva. Rav did not allow his son to extract a thorn. Rav had a thorn, and so the son would go, whoever would take it out would take a needle and try to insert it into the skin where the thorn is and take out the thorn thereby. But if he moves a little too much this way or that way, it can cause the person to bleed. And so Rav would not allow his son to take out a thorn because he was afraid then his son might cause him to bleed and would violate this law. So he would ask someone else to do it. And similarly, Mor, the son of Ravina, did not allow his son to pierce a blister because that might cause a wound that would also bleed. And then it's a prohibition. Although a shegaga, he's not doing it on purpose. He doesn't want to cause an injury to his father on purpose, but it might happen by mistake. And this is a serious problem. So therefore, they would get someone else to do it. Now so apparently these Talmudaim are more stringent than these two over here. Over here they said it's permitted, but even though it's permitted, they wanted to be stringent and they weren't comfortable with it. Now we ask, wait a second, if a son cannot do these procedures on a father, then no one can, because that would be the same truth. Look, if anybody causes an injury, they are liable, even if they did it by mistake. And so no one could be a doctor, because any time someone is going to do a procedure, something might go wrong, they might cause an injury, they might cause bleeding, and then they'll be liable. So then how is anybody else better than a son? And the answer is, Acher shigat lav, beno shigat chenek. No, regarding other people, it would be the unwitting of just a prohibition, of just a lav. Whereas for a father or mother, it would be chenek. So because if someone causes an injury and bleeding to a father and mother, then it's capital punishment. So a mistake of capital punishment is more severe. You want to avoid that more than if it's just a lav. Just hitting a random person, not a father or mother, and causing them an injury is simply a lav, and therefore doing that, a mistake of just a lav, is less stringent, and therefore they preferred that someone else should do the procedure and not their own son. Now we're going to compare this to the laws of Shabbat. On Shabbat, generally a needle that's used for sewing a garment is mukseh. However, if someone has a thorn and needs to use the needle in order to extract the thorn, that's permitted. So you're allowed to use a needle to extract the thorn on Shabbat. Right, that by itself, if you did a good job and took out the thorn, then there's no problem with that. Well, now we ask, but why don't you worry that you're going to make an injury? If you put the needle in a little too much, a little to one side, then you're going to cause bleeding, and you're not allowed to cause a wound on Shabbat. Now that, if you did it on purpose, it would be sikila. Here, okay, it's not sikila because you didn't do it on purpose, but it's the shigaga of a sikila, which is just as bad as a shigaga of hitting a father and mother. And there, you see, those rabbis avoided it. So here too, we should avoid it and say, you know what? Maybe you should not be allowed to take out a thorn using a needle on Shabbat, because it may come to an unwitting violation of something that would be punishable by death penalty of stoning. And the answer is hata mikalkelhu. No, there you're doing a destructive act. Nobody wants to get an injury, and so therefore, if one does even something on purpose on Shabbat, but it's a destructive act, not a constructive act, then one does not get the capital punishment. You only get capital punishment if it's something that is going to be beneficial in a constructive way. Even like extinguishing a fire is hard to be liable for, unless you're extinguishing a fire because you want the wick to be nice and strong so that it's easy to light the next time. That's a constructive purpose for extinguishing a fire. But if you're extinguishing the fire because you don't want it, that's mikalkel and would not be the death penalty. And yet here it's not shigigat sikila, because even if one did it on purpose, it would not be sikila. So therefore, you're allowed to take out a thorn using a needle, because even if it goes wrong by mistake, it would be a shigaga of something that's not capital punishment because it's destructive. Fine, that answer is good according to the opinion that says if you do a destructive act on Shabbat, then patur, it's not allowed, but there's no punishment. But there is an opinion that says even for a destructive act, one is liable to capital punishment. So then what will you say? Then you should avoid taking out a thorn with a needle. But the Mishnah says it's allowed. But according to this opinion, it should not be allowed. So we answer, well, who is the opinion that says if you do something in a destructive way, even if it's causing a wound, but which is destructive because you don't want to cause a wound, nevertheless one is liable. So who says that opinion? Rabbi Shimon, he's the one that says that doing a destructive act on Shabbat is nevertheless liable. Well, since we know it's Rabbi Shimon, we also know Rabbi Shimon says something else. He has a big leniency. Rabbi Shimon, ha'amar kol melacha she'ena siricha legufa patur aleha. Even though he says a destructive act is liable, he also says that when one does a melacha, one does a labor, but it's not for the specific goal of that labor. For example, if someone digs a pit on Shabbat, but he dig a pit because he needs the dirt, then he is not liable, even though he does it on purpose. He's digging a pit on purpose because he needs the dirt for something else. He is not liable because the designated goal of digging a pit is to have a hole in the ground. So if he digs a pit because he wants a hole in the ground, he's liable to capital punishment. If he digs a hole on purpose, knowing that he's digging a hole, but he only does it because he wants the dirt, then he's not liable, because that's not called siricha legufa, necessary for the sake of the melacha as generally defined, that the official goal of the melacha. So that's what Rabbi Shimon says in general, and that applies here also. Even if one would make an injury on purpose with a needle, that is not the specified goal of what he's doing. And therefore, it would not be subject to a liability of making a chabura on Shabbat, because his goal is not to extract blood. He doesn't care to extract blood. If your goal is to extract blood, then that would be the melacha. But so even if he does it on purpose, that he's digging around there in order to get the needle out, and purposefully says, I'm going to go deeper, knowing that it will cause blood to come out, still he's not liable, because that's not the designated goal of that melacha. He doesn't care about the blood. He just, for some other reason, he wants to put the needle in there. So since, even if he did it on purpose, it would not be sikila, and here he's not doing it on purpose. He wants to get the thorn out, not without blood. And so he tries and makes a mistake. So if he makes a mistake, that would be a shegaga of something that is not sikila, but only a lav. And therefore, although Rabbi Shimon would say one is liable for a destructive act, but he has this other leniency of melacha she'ena sericha legufa, and therefore, according to Rabbi Shimon, also, since even if he did it on purpose, it would not be sikila, therefore it's permitted to do it because he's not trying to do it at all, and so it's a shogeg. And even if he would violate while doing shogeg, end up causing bleeding, that would not be sikila. And so if you have those two things, then it's permitted to act in that way. Baruch Adonai Le'olam, Amen ve'amen.